Our economic forecasts were reduced this week, and it's mainly because people selling things are finding it more and more difficult to find buyers, especially here at home. But are there any green shoots? Mother of two Catherine Murphy tells a classic recession story.
I was made redundant a few years ago, found it hard to find the replacement job, thought about what did I want to do, and I thought the best thing was to create a job for myself and focus on something that I was interested in. And the whole area of natural and organic products is a high growth area around the world.
But getting that business to grow now is a challenge when people have less and less to spend, and her hopes to employ staff may have to be put on hold.
I see the business has been growing in the last couple of years, but with all the talks of changes and the insecurity around that, that will be a challenge. I see daily people cannot spend on, people are spending on the basics, they're spending on food, they're cutting out their personal private health insurance, and they are probably going to be cutting out certain, spontaneous buys. So that is a challenge.
This is the economic backdrop to the fiscal treaty debate. It's a picture that is a gloomy one for many.
It's not a case of, vote yes and we're into austerity, vote no and we're in clover, or vice versa. The reality of it is as a result of what happened, we're in a mess that people in my age group at least won't see the end of in my lifetime.
Such is the unease that the treaty is causing among trade unions can be seen from the fact that 3 big unions have opposed it. Impact has come out in favour, but perhaps most significantly, the Irish Congress of Trade Unions has refused to take a position on it.
There's a dilemma which you can't advise people on. That dilemma that you just described yourself, between the negative effects of the deflationary, continued austerity part of the treaty and the dangerous alternative of not actually being able to access the money
How will you
we
vote
need.
yourself?
Well, happily, I don't have to declare that.
It's a position that can't help the Labour Party's efforts to rally support for the treaty.
I am surprised at the significant gulf that appears to be opening up between certain trade unions and the Labour Party, although it has to be said that some of those trade unions would have a consistent enough track record of opposing various European Union referendums. Let's be fair about that. I don't see any upside in voting no.
At the centre of the government's argument is the contention that this treaty guarantees a source of funding in the form of the European Stability Mechanism.
The treaty says very clearly, countries which ratify will have access to ESM if they ever need it. Countries which don't ratify will not have that access. And he says, in his proposition from Sinn Féin, that it's not necessary to have contract with the ESM, that you can get further funding from the EFSF.
That view was challenged consistently by the no side this week.
It falls within your gift as government, exercising a veto to ensure that no mechanism, no funding mechanism at a European level is designed in such a way as to block out Ireland.
If the people of Ireland follow your advice, for which you adduce in a twisted way.
To refer to another member as twisted.
I did not refer to you as twisted. The advice that you are now trying to sell to the Irish people, that somehow we can reject this treaty and that we'll have access to emergency funding if we need it, is twisted.
If the government was forced to take pro-treaty speeches off its special purpose website this week, Sinn Féin too had problems with its literature. Quotes taken from 3 economists were, it seems, out of context. Carl Whelan did tell an Oireachtas committee that the economics of the treaty are pretty terrible, but his rather certain conclusion was that on balance the arguments favour Ireland signing up to it. UCC economist Seamus Coffey spoke about the limitations of the fiscal compact, but again crucially he was in fact supportive of the treaty, saying unambiguously on his blog that there was little to be gained from rejecting it. Colin McCarthy's critique of the limitations of the treaty were used by Sinn Féin also. He said it would not solve the banking and debt crisis, but again he is in fact supportive of backing the treaty. This week he was adamant that there was no upside to voting no, other than throwing the rattle out of the pram. A view that was not shared, understandably, by those canvassing for a no vote.
We've been on the doorsteps already, and we are finding that people are seriously concerned and worried about the huge austerity that's going to come down the tracks with this treaty. They already find themselves under severe pressure by way of mortgages, by way of taxation, by way of household charges and by way of cuts.
That is the kind of talk that could worry the government parties, who have from the opposition benches watched 2 European treaties fail in the last 11 years. In many ways, the political forces arguing against this treaty are even stronger, because when the government lost the first Lisbon Treaty referendum, it didn't have to contend with the United Left Alliance holding its annual conference here. They have 5 TDs and 1 MEP. But the government parties held a joint event this weekend to get the message out that a yes vote will benefit the country, and both parties are promising to get their people out and about to sell that message.
Sometimes when you have a referendum on a European treaty, councillors and TDs and Oireachtas members and people who would be normally campaigning aggressively during a general election or a local election or European election, they're sometimes uncomfortable with the complexity and detail of European treaties, like Nice and Lisbon, that were long, detailed treaties. This is actually different, because the messaging is much simpler. As both sides go about selling a simple message, the dilemma remains for voters. Does this treaty mean more austerity, or does it give the country a crucial funding lifeline? 18% still haven't decided, according to the latest Red Sea Sunday Business Post poll.